Are you aware that a decent keyboard like this one makes an excellent gift? I gave a decent keyboard as a gift recently, and it went down, as I'm sure I've heard it said, a treat.
Oh!
Many of us still use them every day, a lot, but even a relatively inexpensive but solid, dependable keyboard like this one is probably a lot better than what most people are used to nowadays in this degenerate age. So here is the plan for today's video. We're going to look at this perfectly nice keyboard. I'm going to tell you what I like about it, what I don't like so much about it, what I'd like to change about it, and specifically why I think this keyboard, nice as it is, would be better suited to someone else. And then we're going to make some changes to this keyboard. We're going to mod it so that it will be especially better suited to one specific someone else. Yes, this keyboard is going to change. It's going to metamorphose. This keyboard, it's gonna change, baby. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad, it's content. Another reason keyboards make good gifts is that on your own journey to discovering the right keyboard for you, you may acquire a few keyboards that are, like this one, perfectly good, but you just don't need them anymore, and far better for them to be rehomed rather than abandoned. This fella here is a good keyb who has not wronged me in any major way. For me, personally, I fairly quickly discovered, after 2 decades of using shitty laptop keyboards nearly exclusively, that the right keyboard for me is the exact same keyboard that I was using for many years prior to that. Specifically, this one, the beloved and prestigious IBM Model M. Of course, I didn't know it was called that at the time. Otherwise, 20-odd years later, I would have known exactly what to search for when I was shopping for a new keyboard. But then I wouldn't have been able to spend time with the Keychron C1. Keychron fans, if such there be, will have noticed, that these keycaps are not the original Keychron keycaps. I will explain why, but first let's return this cheeky little fella to stock, and then we can properly talk about it. I remember now that I did put some padding inside this spacebar. It's not a particularly pingy keyboard, but the spacebar was, I think. The stock spacebar was okay, though. So here is the Keychron C1 as you would get it new, out of the box, which you can't anymore, but never mind. Speaking of the box, here it is. Ooh, ooh, feels like quality, yeah? What's inside other than the keyboard itself? Well, we've got foam, lovely foam manual thing to tell you to be careful about stuff. Extra keycaps, the keycap puller that you just saw me using, and the a key switch puller. This little guide for making that switch between Windows and Mac layout, and yeah, handy little mini manual stuff. This is the beigey retro version. You can tell from the pearlish and pebblish colorway, although this and this, these alphanumeric keys have been made pebble grey colored instead of pearl, I guess for the sake of symmetry. You know, it's quite nice design wise, but it does bug me a little. So do the pearl white arrow keys, which should normally be grey, but you know, I can accept this as a design choice. None of this is a huge problem for me so far. The retro version has no RGB LEDs, no fancy flashing lights. It's also not wireless, this keyboard. It has no wireless capability, whether Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or what have you. So let's take a look at the wire. It comes with this cord, USB-C at this end, USB-C or USB-A at this end with this nice little branded adapter. That's jolly. It's woven, it's not too stiff, that's good. The only real problem I have with this cable is that it doesn't really match the styling of the keyboard at all. And you might think to yourself, oh, that's okay, I can easily get a replacement cable to match my tastes. But be aware, this end goes into the keyboard extremely snugly. There's not really a lot of room for alternative cables unless they happen to be exactly this size or smaller. So do be careful of that if you want to buy a different cable for this. Measure it first, I reckon. The keycaps are OEM profile. What does that mean? It means they're the same height and shape as you would expect from most normal keyboards from at least the 80s and 90s. Also, the keycaps are double shot, which means that the letters printed on them, like you can see here, are not in fact printed on them. No, what happens is in this case, the pearl white plastic has a P-shaped hole in it. It's got a P hole in it. And that hole is filled from beneath by the black plastic, which is the color, as you can see, of the P. Black P. So that's excellent. Double shot is excellent, or it should be. But more on that in a wee momo. The keyboard has a good weight to it, 714 grams, according to my scientifically precise kitchen scales. So many grams, yet without a signature edition bar of chrome-plated bullshit embedded in the bottom case. It's just well built. Oh, now that's the sound of well. While we're down here, you can see it's got 4 really nice rubber feet. Look at me trying to nudge it. Oh, it's barely nudging. Oh, hardly any nudging. It's also got these very snappy and stable legs if you like your keyboard at an angle, as I do. There are 2 heights to choose, with pads made of that same rubber material. Really neat, very well designed. Or of course you could use both available heights if you really like that thonk. At the back there's this switch here to change from Mac mode to Windows or Android mode. The board comes with swappable keys for Windows and Mac OS's slightly different layout. And out of the box, as is standard with Keychron keyboards apparently, the layout will be set to Mac with the switch to match. So yes, the keycaps are swappable, of course, and upside downable if you want. And on this particular board, they are mounted on Keychron's own clicky and tactile MX Blues, which are probably just a branded OEM switch of some kind. Can you see the branding? It says Keychron. The switches themselves are also swappable or hot swappable, meaning they're not soldered in, so you can change them to a different type of MX style switch without needing to do any soldering or desoldering underneath. That's what this little tool is for. Though, as I recall, that hot swappability was an option when I bought it. So if you buy one of these second-hand, you might want to check first whether you're getting one with hot swappable switches or soldered switches, if you can. Incidentally, the keycaps are pretty smooth, textured, but only subtly. Look at how they shine if I turn the lamp on. Ooh, see that? I know some people would prefer more texture, a bit more grit. Personally, I think smooth keycaps can be quite pleasant. For me, it creates a synesthetic illusion of coolness, which is a refreshing and inviting sensation under the fingertips. That's how the keycaps feel. How do the switches feel? How does the board feel altogether? Well, let's have a go. Listen, I'll be real with you. Keyboard people, keyby peepies, keyaboos, that's what you are. I don't really know enough about MX switches. I'm not into mechanical keyboards in that way. They're all mechanical switches. All switches are mechanical. Rubber domes, they're mechanical. It's a mechanism. All keyboards are mechanical keyboards. I don't know enough about MX style switches to draw any useful, detailed comparisons for you to other slightly different MX style switches. I'll keep it simple and personal. This keyboard sounds good and feels good. It goes clickety click click, and you can feel the clicks. And that makes me happy. There's a tiny bit of travel and resistance before the click. The click feels and sounds sharp and definite, yet gentle. And then after the click, there's quite a bit more travel before hitting bottom. And that too has its own very satisfying and solid feeling and sound. The keys can wobble a bit on their stems. Especially the wide keys that are not wide enough to have a stabilizer. Shift has a stabilizer. That's no problem. He's fine. Caps lock, on the other hand. Whoa, whoa, no, don't rock the boat. Oh, no, I can't swim. Oh, guys, stop it now. But while actually typing, does that even have an effect? I feel like not really. You might notice if you're an aesthete, a connoisseur, and you've just come from using switches that feel considerably better, such as IBM buckling spring over membrane switches. IBM capacitive buckling spring switches. Or Brother buckling spring switches manufactured for IBM. That's the case for me now, but when I got this keyboard, it was a huge, revelatory, miraculous feeling upgrade from keyboards that felt and sounded and looked considerably worse. And that will be the case for most people. And let me dwell on that for a bit, because this is what's important. As I alluded to earlier, I got this keyboard after a couple of years back, switching back to a desktop computer setup after probably about 20 years of using laptops or tablets with laptop-like keyboards nearly exclusively. I was very excited to be shopping for a proper keyboard again. You know, a keyboard that you have and it plugs in to the computer. Oh, it's the keyboard. This little fella cost maybe $50 or $60, including postage. That's US dollars, the big dollars. I was thinking, what? How? What? Where? Since when did keyboards cost that much? Was that always a thing? All the keyboard people, you know, online were saying, "Oh yeah, it's a good budget option. It's a great budget keyboard. It's a good starter keyboard." I'm thinking, fuck off. But obviously not all the way off, because I did get it, and it really did alter and improve my day-to-day life in a noticeable way. It feels good, it sounds good, and just look at it. It's got those classic colors, and it's a beautifully designed object. It made me happy to see and happy to use. I would walk into my living area, my computer desk, the modern day hearth of the home, perhaps, my computer desk centrally placed, and my beautiful, exciting, aesthetically satisfying, joy-generating new keyboard, the natural centerpiece of that desk. And I would walk into my living room and I would see this keyboard waiting for me, and I would immediately want to sit down and write something. And that's good, isn't it? Because I'm a writer. Yes, you heard me, a writer of all people, talking about keyboards on YouTube. Not a coder, not a tech man with a teenage hairdo and an outdoor voice and always a succulent, a tiny succulent on the desk. What could someone explain that to me, by the way? What's that about? These tech men, gamer men on YouTube. Why is there always a tiny succulent on the desk? Is this a code? Is it a symbol, like a secret symbol? Are you in a cult? Are you in a cult, YouTube tech men? What does it mean? Anyway, I have a good friend who is a writer too, and struggles with it sometimes, of course. So that's the kind of experience I want to create for her, to motivate and encourage her. I mean the walking into the living room experience that I described, not the disquiet and agitation at unexplained succulence. So we will be giving this keyboard to her as a birthday present after some alterations. As well as a writer, my friend is also a translator. She needs to be at her keyboard often. However, I don't think she loves being there. It's fair to say she is not greatly enamored of computers as some of us are. Actually, I've been in front of the computer too long myself, so let's go for a walk, do some shopping. My friend has, on several occasions, expressed to me how important it is for one's workspace or creative space to be aesthetically pleasing and comfortable and inspiring. And she's right, of course. She's put a lot of work into her tiny Parisian apartment. I've seen pictures. There's artwork scrapbooked onto the walls. There are nooks within nooks, surfaces decked with eclectic knick-knackery. There are plants. Don't know about succulents. Don't know if she's got any tiny succulents, but I'm sure she's not in the computer cult, as we've established. But she's got abundant greenery. She's got a lovely soft cat. What she doesn't have is a delightful, enticing computer keyboard. She's got, like, I think a MacBook, and the MacBook is sort of, on a tier up here. So she's got a separate keyboard, but the separate keyboard is basically, it's like a MacBook without the screen. It's exactly the same keyboard. You know, they've got those little, like tile keys. I don't know if you've ever had, if you've lived in an old enough house that you've had a tiled bathroom floor. Sometimes the tiles come loose from the cement and you step on that. That's what it feels like, except small, and it's your fingers instead of your foot. Anyway, she deserves better. But Before we get on with improving this keyboard, I need to finish reviewing it as it is. I told you how much I liked it, so why am I passing it along? Why isn't it right for me? There are 3 reasons. Reason number 1, as I mentioned, this was really a stepping stone to finding my way back home again. Reason number 2, I said this keyboard was very beautiful, and that's mostly true. But let's take a closer look, a long, hard look at these double-shot keycaps. Of course, because they're double-shot, the legends are all incredibly sharp. The alphanumerics, as you can see, are all pretty neat. The central top alignment is a pretty cool design choice. But now, look at the modifier and navigation keys. The first letters are not capitalized. That's a design choice I like considerably less, but it is a choice and I respect it. It's not a deal breaker, but on the website, when I was ordering this keyboard, you know, these legends at least look very, very neat. The real thing, as you can see, is not so neat, but somewhat fucked. Isn't some of the kerning a little off? And the line widths, too, are uneven in a way that's clearly not intentional. Actually, look at this end legend here. The E is thin at the top, as I think you can see, and the D, maybe it's hard to tell on camera, but is it even aligned to the same bottom line? That circle comes down a little bit far, and this isn't the only key where you can see that. I mean, look over here at the Del. You can see some of the same problems. The tab key as well, the weird kerning, the circle on the B seems to come up higher than the circle on the A. It's like whatever typeface this is, it isn't. It's just, it doesn't work. Something's gone wrong. Insert, so wonky. More like insert another coin to try again, Keychron. Caturl, shit kerning. Option actually looks pretty good, mostly, so they can do it if they want to. Shift is a bit of a nightmare. You've got your horrible kerning. You've got your uneven line weights. I apologize for this next one. Sensitive viewers might want to skip ahead. For those of you prepared to witness true villainy, caps lock, or caps, is the worst of all. It's all over the place. It's dog shit. Look at the kerning. You walk into this situation and you can see all of these characters just hate each other. It's so awkward. The circles, A and P, are a completely different size. S is weirdly stretched and seems to lean to the left like a reverse italic. And what's more, it's not even the same S as the other modifier keys have. It's a different S. The C is taller. The S is lower. The P and the C seem to reach both higher and lower than the other characters. What's going on? While we're at it, another problem with the legends on these keycaps that I honestly tried to ignore but is just so visually disturbing that it leaps out at you is, look at the volume control legends on the F keys here. Do you see what I see? This crime against the human eyeball? Look at this. Mute, volume down, volume up. All 3 icons share the same sub-icon, I guess, this little image of a speaker. However, someone made the decision, not for any practical reason that I can see, because the margins are wider on some other keys on this keyboard, but on these keys, someone decided that there should be a margin on each side, and that margin should limit the width of these icons. And of course, naturally, the volume up icon with its 3 bracket-shaped sound symbols here, this icon is going to be wider than the others. And if we keep the speaker here and the speaker here, if we keep this speaker here the same size, apparently this whole icon would become too wide. And as you can see, at some point, some designer has committed a crime in 2 parts. The first crime was to shrink only this icon, not the others, not all 3 in a group together. So this speaker symbol here is now smaller than its brothers here. But that wasn't bad enough. On top of that, part 2 of this egregious sin is they've kept the line weight the same. So the icon has shrunk, but the line weight has stayed the same, exaggerating the wrongness. This speaker now looks completely different from these speakers. It doesn't look like a smaller version. It looks altogether different. To call this merely distracting would be really testing that fuzzy border between tact and outright falsehood. To me, this is the visual equivalent of nails across a chalkboard. In fact, I imagine that's the sound this speaker is playing. Still on the topic of key legends, but the last thing, I promise, the spacebar. It has a line on it. This I cannot abide. A spacebar should be a perfect swathe of blankness and purity, dominating and defining the bottom row. A line isn't a space. You know what's a space? Space. Obviously, this line on the spacebar is something I overlooked when I bought it. That's on me. And I'm not completely naive. I think I understand why there's a line on this double-shot spacebar. Oh, won't you tell us, Patrick? Please. Well, all right, Kaaru Oji-san, I will. Even though this keyboard is not an RGB LED rainbow flashy gaming keyboard with see-through legends for the light to shine through, the keycaps must have been made using the same molds as keys like that for other Keychron designs. You remember the black plastic inside these keys? On a flashy rainbow RGB LED keyboard, this black plastic would of course be translucent so that the LED lights in here somewhere will shine through the keycaps and look pretty. And they do look pretty. No doubt, using the same molds for multiple different key sets helps Keychron to minimize their costs and keep their keyboards relatively affordable. Gamers, you know, they love the darkness, don't they? But the truth is, as soon as the lights go out, they completely forget where the spacebar is. They can't find it. Where's the spacebar? Which one is the space? Is this it? Is this the spacebar? Oh God! Unless you put a shiny little line on it that glows like a beacon saying, come home, come back to the dark room, back to the computer, come back to where it's safe. But I didn't buy a gaming keyboard. I bought a non-RGB, supposedly retro-styled keyboard. So I understand why this line is on this spacebar, but I don't fucking care. It shouldn't be my problem. It's ugly and it's stupid and I hate it. You might find all of this very trivial, but listen, as I said, the board is largely beautiful, Clearly, very capable designers were hired to work on it. So why, of all things, was the typography produced so ham-fistedly? It's not only Keychron. You see so many of these ludicrously fancy MX keyboards designed by the expensively resurrected lich of Andy Warhol, with keycaps carved from mammoth ivory and capybara lavender puff dragon's milk aurora switches which can make the Dalai Lama come from a distance of up to 60 meters, lubricated by the hungry saliva of God himself as he dreams of the apocalypse. But the legends printed on the keys are passable to perfunctory to aggressively ugly. I don't think it's the majority of the time, but it's more often than you would hope, given that the basic fundamental purpose of a keyboard is to put these letters, characters, into the computer. That's what a keyboard is. Surely, in terms of visual design, the key legends really ought to be the main event. Anyway, reason number 3 that the Keychron C1 is not quite the right keyboard for me is Keychron keyboards do seem to be designed with Macs in mind. Out of the box, they have Mac layouts and are set to Mac mode. These media functions on the F row and even these specific icons for them, this is all Mac stuff. I'm not a Mac user and have no desire to be, but that's okay. The keyboards also have Windows mode and Windows layouts. No worries. But in fact, yes worries. If I buy a tenkeyless Windows keyboard, that's exactly what I expect. A standard full-size layout with the numpad lopped off. That means I expect these 3 keys here to be print screen system request, scroll lock, and pause break. Thus, legacy keys, you might say. Who uses them anymore? Me, I reply. I use them. Fuck you. They're supposed to be here. Now, a Mac user, like my friend in Paris, wouldn't be troubled by this. Mac keyboards haven't included these keys in a long time. When they're present, they're usually just assigned to F13, F14, and F15. Although I'm sure I've once seen maybe F13 squeezed in here somewhere and F14, 15, and 16 or something like that. Anyway, Max, eh? It's a good name for a dog. Let's see what we get on the Keychron C1 in place of these keys, whether you're in Mac mode or not. This is a screen cropping tool, I think. To be fair, I'm pretty sure this key does actually send the print screen key code in Windows mode. This one, I couldn't figure out. The manual, in fact, does not even acknowledge these 2 keys, let alone explain them. Now, from the icon, I guessed that this was a microphone input mute and unmute button, maybe. That could be handy in these days of Zoom calls and, you know, Microsoft Teams or whatever. I don't know. However, just now while making this video, I happened to look at the underside of the box this keyboard comes in, and I learned that it is apparently a dedicated Siri or Cortana key. Anyway, for me, in Windows 10 and 11, when I've used this keyboard, this key does nothing. But having now learned that it's a Cortana key, maybe that's because one of the first things I do on a fresh install of Windows is disable Cortana one way or another. Anyway, fuck this key. This is the worst key of all. lock screen. It's equivalent to Windows plus L. I never use lock screen. I hate the lock screen. I use my computer at home and I live by myself peacefully and contentedly on the days my neighbors remember what species they belong to. In my life, the lock screen's only purpose is to force me to look up my fucking Microsoft password because I can never remember it, because I never use the lock screen. Yet I do use the lock screen, don't I, when my keyboard has a lock screen key for some unholy reason located in the exact position where I am most likely to keep bumping it accidentally while reaching for a bottle of poison so I can end this nightmare.
Patrick, calm yourself. Pray do not furrow your noble brow over a problem whose solution is so trivial. Simply reassign the keys.
But Uncle Carl, the keyboard is not programmable.
Then reassign them software side. In Windows, you mad shrike. Ha 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 ha. There is yet time to be merry, to live without trouble or care.
Well, that's interesting because that's exactly what Keychron recommends here in the manual. Now, for some reason, I don't remember exactly, I was either unwilling or unable to use sharp keys, but I did try the keyboard manager in Microsoft Power Toys in Windows 11. That didn't help because this key, as I recall, Windows simply didn't recognize. It just didn't exist. Now, whether that's a problem in the keyboard or whether it's because I have Cortana disabled, I don't know and I don't care. And this key is the Windows L shortcut for locking the screen, and Windows does not allow it to be reassigned. Great stuff. Great stuff. But as I said earlier, my impression is that Keychron keyboards are designed by and for Mac users, with Windows functionality being added as an important but nonetheless secondary consideration after that. So I'm hoping that in a Mac environment, these keys will do what they're supposed to do and do it better than they do for me. In any case, for a Mac user, these are just bonus keys anyway, really. For me, they are missing keys or wrong keys. I find them disturbing. One final thing about this keyboard that isn't horrible but could stand to be improved. Listen again to the sound of it. There's quite a lot of mid-range resonance inside this case, ringing out after each keystroke. It's not ping. I like a bit of ping. It doesn't feel like a true element of this keyboard's timbre. It feels like just too much echo, just noise muddying up the sounds that we do want to hear and enjoy. It's the sort of noise that if you were building a recording studio, or even just a space that you could record in, you would put all of the sound-absorbing materials on the walls and in the corners to try and minimize. So we'll try to do something similar inside this little room. Okay, I think that actually is everything. That's the review finished. That was the prelude. Now we can finally get on with turning this keyboard, this very good keyboard, to be clear, into a slightly better keyboard and, most importantly, a more personalized gift. So won't you bear with me?
But all this must wait until the next episode and the following episode. For this reason, you must subscribe to the channel. In part 2, we will add some sound-absorbing material to the inside of the keyboard's case. And that's all. You may wish to skip this episode, so be sure to subscribe to the channel so you are able to skip it consciously and deliberately. In part 3, the keyboard will be customized and personalized with new key switches and keycaps. It is beyond the means of man to describe the wonders that await, if only you submit to my power, subscribe to the channel.